Hi there, Danny here. Today we're going to be working on oversplits. Oversplits are a really great exercise for those of you who already have flat splits and are looking to take it to the next level, as well as folks who are close to their flat splits, just an inch or two away from the ground, so that you can be working your hip flexors and your hamstrings a little bit more than your traditional split practice. So class today, we're going to start with a bit of a warm-up, extra focus on hip flexors and hamstrings. We're going to go through a couple different routines for our front splits and try oversplits in lots of different ways with blocks under different part of our body for support. We're going to talk about how to keep your knees safe in oversplits, especially for folks like me whose knees hyperextend. All that said, let's get started with our warm-up. Apologies, my head gets a little cut off in the camera, but that's okay. It's more important that you see what my hips are doing. We're going to start with a couple different variations of lunges. So standing on one edge of your mat. First one's just regular back lunges. We're going to take our right foot, step it back, bending that knee to the floor, come back to standing. We're going to 5 times on the right leg together. So stepping back for 5, 4, 3, 2, keeping those torsos nice and lifted. Last one, switch legs, 5 back lunges with that left leg stepping back, 5. 4, knee doesn't have to touch the ground as long as it's bending behind you. 3, 2. Last one. Back to the right leg. This time we're going to add a knee lift after the lunge. So we're going to lunge back, lift that knee up towards our chest, and repeat 5 times. Right leg back first. 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one. Same thing on that left leg. Back lunge with the knee lift. Stepping back 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one. And last round, we're going to add a little straight leg lift to the end. I want you to kick up as hard as you can, but I want you to be lifting slow and controlled after that lunge. So we'll be stepping back, lifting our straight leg in front 5 times. Right leg first, back for 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one. Shake it out. Left leg, step it back for 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one. Shake it out. Take your feet about hip width apart. Go through a couple hip circles. Switch directions. Take them the other way. We're going to do knee circles to the outside, so you can have hands wherever you'd like for balance. You can put them on a wall or a chair if you need to. One more on each leg. Then we're going to switch directions. Circle it to the inside. One more on each leg. Okay, go ahead and bring the insides of your feet together. Bend those knees. Take a couple knee circles. Switch directions. And take it back on up to standing. We're going to roll out our ankles. Right foot first, either toe on the ground, circling out that heel, or foot in the air, circling out the ball of your foot. Switch directions. Good. And switch feet. Left foot, circle out that ankle. Reverse your circle. Good. Give everything a nice little shake. We're going to move on to leg extensions. Fancy name for kicking with our legs. This is one of my favorite exercises to make sure our quads and our hip flexors are really warm. Technically, it's a bit of an active flexibility exercise for our hamstrings as well. So we're going to start with all of our weight in our left leg. I want that left leg to stay straight, quad engaged. Right leg, we're going to extend forwards, leg straight, toes pointed, lifting and lowering as high as you can with control. And I want you to try to avoid bending that left knee. That's going to let you kick higher but I'd rather you keep that quad nice and strong, even if that means you're kicking a little lower. So 10 on each leg, starting left leg base, right leg forwards, lifting and lowering. 10, 9, hips staying nice and level, pointing forwards. 7, 6, keeping that base leg nice and strong, no bending. 4, 3, 2. Last round, right leg is going to stay lifted. We're going to make a tiny circle with the toes, but leading it from the hip. 5 in each direction. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reverse the circle. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax, shake it out. Switch legs. So now our right leg is our base, nice strong tree trunk. Left leg, we're going to straighten forwards, point those toes, lift and lower 10 times. 10, 9, 8, keeping the quad of that right leg engaged as well. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one, left leg stays lifted as high as you can. Circle it 5 in each direction. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reverse the circle. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shake it out. I'm going to do leg extensions behind us. So again, both legs are going to stay straight. Right leg I'm going to extend behind, toes are pointed. Double check that both of your hips are pointing forwards, and the thigh of that back leg is also pointing forwards. We're not going to let it turn out. So if you bend your knee, foot kicks right behind you, not across to the side. So from here, you're going to squeeze your right butt cheek, lift that heel just a little bit, drop it down 10 times. Together, lifting for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Both legs staying straight. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shake out your right leg, plant that right foot, take that left leg back, double check both of your hips are square, torso stays lifted as we lift for 10, 9, feeling the squeeze in the butt cheek, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Shake it out. Now, before we do some more intense stretches for our hamstrings, we're going to do a really brief nerve glide for our sciatic nerve. So coming down to lying on your back. This next exercise is not a stretch, and I don't want it to feel like a stretch. What we're doing, and I'll link to another video that talks about this in more detail for those of you who are curious, is we're taking our sciatic nerve, which is one of the nerves that runs from our skull, all the way down our spinal cord, out our hip, through the back side of our leg, around our heel, through the bottom of our foot and our toes, helping it glide back and forth through all of our soft tissue, which is what it likes to do. Sometimes it can get a little stuck if you've got tight muscles or other things that are pinching it in place. So this is a nice thing to do before we do deep hamstring work to make sure the nerves are gliding where they're supposed to before we put them under any kind of tension. So lying on our backs, I'm going to have my hands behind my right leg supporting that right thigh. Right knee is bent, right toes are pointed. And I'm going to start to kick that right leg up, but stop just when I barely start feeling a stretch. They're in the back of the right leg and the hamstring, or maybe this is something you typically feel in your calf. So once you get to barely the beginning of a stretch, that's where we stop. Flex the right foot, drop that heel back down to our butt, point our toes. We're doing that 10 times, making sure you're not actually feeling a stretch, so knee can still stay really bent, keeping it gentle. So no more than like a 3 out of 10 intensity. So toes are pointed as we kick, stopping at the beginning of feeling a stretch. Flex and drop. It's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead, shake that leg out for a moment. Now flex our right foot. Do the same thing, but keeping the foot flexed. This is just adding a teeny bit amount of tension to the nerve. We still want to keep this in that pre-stretch zone. So stop before you really start feeling any kind of deep stretch, either in your hamstring or in those calves. So with our right foot flexed, we're going to start to kick it up. Stopping when you start to feel a stretch, drop it back down. Another 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one. Go ahead, shake out that leg. Switch sides, drop on our right foot. Hands behind that left thigh for support. Starting with toes pointed. We're going to point and flex as we go. Starting to kick that leg up. Stopping when you barely start to feel a stretch. Flex the foot, drop it down. For 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one with the point and flex. Shake it out for a moment. Hands come back to that thigh. This time left foot's going to stay flexed as we start to kick it straight. Stopping when you get to the beginning of a stretch, drop it back down. So still keeping this super duper gentle. Should probably be the easiest thing all class long. 7 more. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead, shake your leg out. Now that our sciatic nerve is moving a little bit more like we want it to, now we can do some deeper stuff for our hamstrings. So we're going to come to a block-supported tabletop. I want you to grab 2 yoga blocks, and we're going to have our blocks under our hands, hands under our shoulders, heels right underneath our hips. And I want you to find a comfortable forward fold. So depending on your hamstring flexibility, we're looking to start at like a 6 out of 10 intensity. So if you've got hamstrings that are a little tighter, that's going to be hands on tall blocks, knees a little bit bent, back totally flat. If you've got really happy hamstrings and hanging out with your legs straight, your back flat, hands on blocks, doesn't feel like a stretch at all, you're welcome to take your hands to lower blocks or all the way to the floor. But I don't want you to reach so far that you're feeling a really intense hamstring stretch to start with, because we're going to make it harder. So from your 6 out of 10 intensity stretch to start with, I'm going to shift my weight to my left leg, extend my right leg behind me, and we're going to do some standing split kicks. So they look a little something like this. We're going to do 10 on each leg. So things I want you to think about, we're going to make sure both hip bones are staying square with the floor, particularly that right hip. I want it to stay pointing down, not opening up to the side as we kick. So right leg or right hip points to the floor. Right leg, I want you to stay super straight with those toes pointing. We're going to kick it 10 times with control. Lifting for 10, 9, 8. If you want to add more of a forward fold, if you've got really happy hamstrings, as you kick that right leg up, you can bend your elbows, drop your torso into more of a forward fold. And 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. On our last one, we're going to keep that right leg lifted as high as you can, either with your chest lifted or maybe you've opted for the forward fold. We're going to pulse that right heel. 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drop that leg down. Walk it out for a moment. Your hammies a break. And stand on up if you need to. Take a little reset wiggles that you like before round number 2. So resetting back into comfortable hamstring stretch. It's time shifting our weight to that right leg, extending left leg behind us, making sure our hips stay square, both hip bones pointing towards the floor like headlights, lifting and lowering that left leg 10 times. Optional addition for folks who have very happy hamstrings, you can bend your elbows, add a forward fold when you lift that left leg. But make sure your hips aren't turning out, they're staying square to the floor. So 10 together, lifting for 10, 9, 8, 7, feeling a stretch in the right hamstrings, maybe even calf as you're lifting that left leg, squeezing the left glutes. 4, 3, 2. Last one, left leg is going to stay lifted as high as you can. Keep that left hip square to the floor as we pulse that leg. Little pulses, 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, drop that leg down, walk it out. And go ahead, come down to sitting on the ground, on your butt. Do a little bit more for our hip flexors as we're stretching out those hamstrings, and then we'll give those hip flexors a bit of a stretch. So for our next exercise, we're going to be doing leg kicks lying on the ground. Couple of options for these. Since we're doing oversplits today, I would encourage you to do these with 1 or 2, if it's comfortable on your low back. Blocks under the back of your hips. As our goal is I want that leg that's extended to be starting in a stretched position for our hips. So if we've got our butt on the ground, this isn't going to be very much of a hip flexor stretch for you folks, as you're a little more on the bendy end of the spectrum. So you can start with 1 block, you can add a second block, or if you want super challenge, we just use our glutes to lift our hips up as that right leg is extended, getting an extra workout, keeping those hips elevated. So I will show it a couple different ways as we go. So starting with 1 or 2 blocks under your hips, right leg is going to be extended, left knee can be bent, foot on the floor. Optional, you can push into that left foot, keep your glutes lifted, not resting on the block if you want an extra challenge. We're going to lift that right leg up 10 times. Right leg stays straight, kicking it towards our chest with control, lowering it down. Here for 9. Make sure that heel goes all the way to the floor each time. 8. 7, and if you're doing the booty up version, I want you to make sure your hip bones are staying square to the ceiling and they're not tilting to the side as you're dropping that leg. Here for 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one, right leg's going to stay lifted as high as you can. Pulse it in, 10 seconds of pulsing. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg, shake it out. Then we'll switch sides, planting that right foot, extending our left leg nice and long. Left leg stays straight. Butt is on 1 or 2 blocks. Or maybe you're opting for super challenge mode, keeping it lifted. We're going to lift that left leg 10 times, kicking it with control towards our chest. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one, left leg stays lifted as high as you can. Pulse it in 10 seconds. Keep it straight. Keep that quad engaged. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drop that leg. Shake it out. Give both your legs a shake if they need it. So now our hip flexors are really warm from doing all of that, pulling our leg towards our chest action. Let's stretch them out. This is my favorite stretch for our hip flexors in the world. I do it almost every single class I teach because it is so good. We're going to start stretching out the front of our hip on the right leg. I have that right leg extended. Start with 1 block under your hips if you haven't done this before. Then I can talk about how to know you should go up to 2 blocks. I have my right leg totally straight. Left knee, options here. Option number 1, we're going to have it bent as we pull it in towards our chest. And I want you to pull it in as much as humanly possible, trying to get that thigh to your belly or that knee towards your shoulder, because what we're trying to do by pulling this left leg in is starting to tilt our pelvis so that our tailbone starts angling up towards the ceiling, top of our pelvis starts falling towards the floor. You'll notice my right leg levitates away from the ground, keeping that left leg hugged in and keeping our right leg straight, so you're going to have to squeeze that quad a little bit. We're going to push the backside of our right leg down to the floor, so you're going to feel a little squeeze through those glutes or your thut, the backside of your thigh meets your butt, and stretch through the front of that hip. If you can easily get that heel to the floor while that thigh is already touching your belly, go ahead and add a second block under your hips. This is going to help you tilt your hips even higher and make it harder for that heel to reach the ground. Option number 2, for folks who want to multitask and add a hamstring stretch, instead of keeping that left leg bent as we're pressing our right heel to the floor, you can partially straighten that leg for a little bit of a hamstring stretch, or totally straighten that leg. or a full hamstring stretch, basically doing a split while you are lying on your back. I'll do all 3 ways. We're going to be doing 3 rounds of this. We're contracting, relaxing, contracting, relaxing. So I'm going to start with my left knee bent. You are welcome to have it slightly straight or all the way straight if you want that extra hamstring stretch. But whatever knee variation you choose, we're going to pull that left leg as much as humanly possible. Let your right leg levitate up. Make sure that right leg is straight. Point those toes. Keep that quad engaged. Press the backside of the right leg to the floor. Just constantly pushing it down for 10 seconds. Feeling that stretch through the front of your hip. You're engaging the muscles in the back of the hip. Holding 8. Keep pushing it down. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax your legs for a moment. You can give them a little shake out. Then round number 2, you can do the same leg variation or take a different one if you like. This time I will go partially straight with that left leg. Right leg is going to stay straight. Left leg, you're going to pull it in as much as humanly possible. Keep that right quad engaged as we push the backside of that right leg down. So make sure that right knee isn't bending to get the foot to the floor. We want that leg straight so that you're getting that nice hip flexor stretch and not cheating by just letting that foot down. Push that right leg down for 10, 9, 8, 7. Can you pull your left leg in even more? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax your legs. Shake them out. If you need to, you can readjust your butt block so it's under a more comfortable spot under your hips. Sometimes it kind of wiggles around from all of our kicking. All right, last round. Right leg straightens one last time. Left knee can be bent, little straight, or I'll do all the way straight, show you what that looks like. We're going to pull that left leg in as much as humanly possible. Let your right leg levitate, and then press the whole back side of that right leg down to the floor, constantly pushing it down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax your legs. Shake them out. Go ahead and readjust your butt block, even though it's under the back of our hips, if you need to. Extend that left leg out. We're going to do those 3 rounds now with the left leg extended, so we're stretching the front of the left hip, those left hip flexors. So round number 1, right knee can be bent, kind of straight, or all the way straight. Whichever one you choose. Right leg, you're going to pull it in as much as you can. Let your tailbone start to tuck up, top of your pelvis towards the floor. Keep holding that right leg in as we press the whole back side of the left leg to the floor. Feeling a squeeze in the left glutes and keeping that quad nice and engaged. Holding 10. 9. Keep pushing that left leg down. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax your legs. Shake them out for a moment. Give them a break. Round number 2. Extending that left leg. Right leg, we're going to hug it in towards our chest. Choose your leg variation of choice. I'm going to do a little bit bent, a little bit straight. Pull that right leg in. Keep that left leg super straight as you're pushing your heel to the floor. Backside of the knee to the floor. Hamstrings to the floor. Here for 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax your legs. Shake them out. 1 more round to go. All right, last round. Left leg is going to extend. Right leg, choose your shape of choice. I'm going to go all the way straight. I really like splits on this leg. This is my favorite leg. You're going to pull that right leg in as much as you can. Let your left leg start to levitate and press that left leg down. Don't let that knee bend. Keep it straight. Shoot energy out of those toes. Pressing it down. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax your legs. Shake it out. Go ahead, plant your feet, remove your butt block or butt blocks, and we'll get started with some more of our traditional split work in a kneeling position. So first round, we're going to have no blocks under our legs. We're just going to do a little bit more, making sure our hip flexors and our hamstrings are good to go. And then we're going to progressively start adding blocks under different part of our legs to get a deeper stretch. So we are going to start in a low lunge with our left leg forwards. So for our low lunge, I want that left knee on top of that left ankle. Right knee can be on the floor, or if you've got sensitive knees, you might want to roll your yoga mat, put a pillow under that knee, wear knee pads, anything like that to give it a little bit more cushion. I want to make sure both hip bones are square and pointing forwards, and then our torso stays lifted. So I like setting up my legs first and then pushing into my left thigh to lift my torso. Hands can be on your thigh, they can be on blocks, you can just chill out with them on your hips, just making sure we've got a little bit of a tuck through that tailbone, and I'm not relaxing my belly on my thigh and letting my tailbone lift. That's going to remove the stretch from our hip flexors. So small tuck in the tailbone, torso nice and lifted, feeling a stretch through the front of that right hip. And if you'd like that stretch to be more intense, I want you to tuck your tailbone even more, squeeze that right butt cheek, trying to push that hip forwards. So from our nice stretch here, we're going to add small amount of movement. Just want you to rock your hips forwards an inch, back an inch. We're not going to be bouncing into awkwardly hip thrusting. I want this to be nice and controlled. So teeny move forwards, teeny movement backwards. And if you want a challenge for this one, you're going to do no hands on blocks, making our hips do all of the stabilization as we're slowly rocking forwards and backwards. But if you want, you can have fingers on blocks for support, on a wall for balance if this feels challenging, totally up to you. And go ahead, bring your hips back to a nice steady state. We're going to add some engagement here. Round number one, you're going to push into your left foot enough to lift your hips a little farther away from the ground. But then we're going to deepen that hip flexor stretch, trying to tuck our tailbone, almost like we're tilting the top of our pelvis backwards, finding that nice stretch through the front of our right hip. I want you to keep squeezing your right glutes, holding that nice active tuck. We're going to be here 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, just breathe in, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Don't relax just yet. We're going to keep that active tuck, but round number 2, we're adding, taking our right knee, left heel, trying to squeeze them towards each other. Trying to kick that right knee forwards. You're going to feel the front of your thigh, your hip flexors. Just give a little bit of engagement. So 10 seconds, right knee, left heel, squeeze them towards each other. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you can relax your legs back to our passive stretch. Let your hips sink as low as is comfortable without leaning forward. So torso still stays lifted. Hanging out here for a couple of breaths. Join your break time. And in our passive stretch, let's take a little bit of a lean to the side. I'm going to lift my right arm up overhead. Start leaning off to the left side. Left hand might be on your thigh for balance. It can be on a block. If you're very side bendy or you've got hips really low, that hand can come all the way to the floor. But we're looking to add a stretch anywhere in your right side body, maybe all the way in your waist. You may even feel it a little bit more through the front of the hip. Hanging out for just another breath or two. Go ahead, lift that torso on up. Then we'll straighten our front leg, finding a hamstring stretch, giving those hip flexors a break. So we're going to double check that both of our hip zones are pointing forwards, nice and square. And we're initiating this stretch by tilting our hips. The rest of our torso just happens to follow. So I'm really trying to lift my sits bones and my tailbone away from the floor. You might have fingertips on blocks. You might have hands all the way to the floor. Whatever is feeling comfortable, wherever you still have your back flat. We're just going to hold here for a couple of breaths. If you'd like a movement option here, if you're someone like me who likes to wiggle a bit while you stretch, go ahead, flex that left foot. We're going to add some internal and external rotation. Rotating toes, knee, and thigh to the outside of the mat. Toes, knee, and thigh towards the inside of the mat. All while you're keeping your forward fold. This is going to get your hamstring stretch at a couple of different angles. It's also working on our internal and external hip rotation. That is an option if that feels funky or you have a hard time feeling the hamstring stretch once we add the movement. You're welcome to hang out with toes pointed or foot flexed if you prefer your hamstring stretch while you're getting a little calf stretch as well. And if you're doing that windshield wiper, go ahead, do one more to each side. And we're going to bring that foot back to neutral. Point those toes, bend our knees, sink back down to our low lunge. And from here, we're going to find our zigzag split. If you've never done a zigzag split before, it's basically a split where both knees are bent And I like this one because it encourages more of a stretch in the back hip. We don't have to worry about our hamstrings quite so much in that front leg. So for our zigzag split, all you have to do is take your front foot somewhere in front of the knee. So instead of having that heel right under the knee like in our lunge, that heel is now a little bit in front of the knee. Or if you're a very splitty person, you can let that foot keep going forwards as long as that knee is bent and as long as your torso is staying lifted. We're going to be here about 30 seconds. Just taking a couple breaths. First 20 seconds are going to be passive, just relaxing. And if your hips are low enough, you're welcome to throw a block somewhere under that front leg for a little bit of thigh support if that feels comfortable. An optional addition for the last 10 seconds, if you want an active flexibility challenge, you can tuck your right toes, straighten that right leg, lift the knee, quads engaged, glutes engaged, pushing those hips down, holding 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drop that knee if you had it lifted, and then we're going to slide our front foot out to our traditional split. So straightening that leg, sliding that foot forwards, or tucking your back toes, sliding your back foot back, making sure both hip bones are pointing forwards. Hands can be on blocks. You comfortably sit in your split. You just get to chill out for the next 20 seconds. All the other rounds of splits, we'll be adding blocks. Will be a little bit more challenging. But for now, just trying to relax in our front split. And if your hips are a couple inches away from the ground, that's okay too. We'll get a little bit lower as we keep warming up. Breathe in here. And just like with the zigzag split, if you want to challenge, you're welcome to tuck your toes, lift that back knee for our last 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on down. Bring your butt to the ground. Shake out your legs. Take your feet a little wider than hip distance. Windshield wiper those knees side to side. Remember that same routine with our right leg forwards. So feel free to take any other kind of reset wiggle movements that you need in your hips if there's anything you like. When you're ready, we'll meet back in our low lunge with our right leg forwards. So right knee is on top of my ankle. My torso is nice and lifted. I'm feeling that stretch through the left hip flexors, the front of that left hip. And once you've got your nice hip flexor stretch here, we'll add a little rock forwards and backwards. Slow and controlled, just getting that hip flexor stretch a little bit more intense and getting a little engagement through that front leg as we're pushing that foot, pushing our hips back. A couple more rocks here. And we'll add a little bit more activation. We're going to push into our front foot, push into that right foot, lift your hips a little farther away from the ground, actively tuck that pelvis, trying to curl your tailbone to the floor or lift your pubic bone towards the ceiling. Feel that extra squeeze in your left butt cheek, those left glutes, keeping your pelvis tucked. We're going to hold here for 10 seconds. 10, 9. Nice stretch through the front of that left hip. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Don't relax yet. Stay here, but we're going to add squeezing right heel, left knee towards each other. Engaging the underside of that right leg, front of the left leg. Squeeze them in. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then relax. Passive stretch. Hips can sink down. Hands can be on your thigh or on blocks. Keeping our torso nice and lifted so you're still feeling that stretch through the front of the left hip. And if that stretch goes away, go ahead, tuck your tailbone just a little bit to bring it back. Taking a couple breaths here. And then let's add that little side stretch lean. This time we're going to reach left arm up overhead, starting to tilt over to the right side. Right hand might be on your thigh for balance, maybe on your block. Maybe it reaches all the way to the floor, anywhere that feels good. Holds in here for 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift your torso back on up. And then let's give our hip flexors a break. Go ahead, straighten your right leg. We'll find our hamstring stretch on this side. So double checking that our hip bones are pointing forwards, lifting our tailbone, lifting those sits bones to find our forward fold. Good. Right leg can be straight, or if you've got a tendency to hyperextend your knee, go ahead, keep that right knee just a teeny bit bent. It's a nice habit to get into in these half split stretches. It's going to be a little easier once we do them in our full splits, but we will talk about that more once we start adding blocks. Just like when we did this with the other leg forwards, if you would like a little bit of hip rotation work, you can flex your foot, externally rotate that leg, toes, knee, and thigh to the outside, internally rotate that leg, toes, knee, and thigh towards the inside, giving your foot a little windshield wiper back and forth while you're in your forward fold, making sure that back is staying nice and flat. I'm going to do one little windshield wiper side to side if you're doing that little wiggle. And we'll come back. Do neutral thigh, neutral foot, point that right foot. Bend that right knee, sink back down to our nice low lunge. And from here, we'll take it out to our zigzag split for about 30 seconds, and then our traditional split for 30 seconds. Then we'll start adding all the blocks. But last round, without blocks, finding our zigzag split, taking that right foot forward just a little bit, so the heel is somewhere in front of the knee, or you can take it forwards quite a bit if you want a little bit of a deeper stretch on this one. Either version, we're keeping our chest totally lifted. You've always got an option to throw a block anywhere under that front leg for support if that feels good for you. We'll be here about 20 more seconds. Breathe and feel that stretch through the front of that left hip. And then optional addition for the last 10 seconds, you can tuck your left toes, lift that left knee, squeeze your left butt cheek to push your hips down while that leg is straight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drop that left knee if you had it lifted. Start to straighten out that right leg, slide it forwards for our traditional split, making sure both hip bones are pointing forwards and not starting to open up out to the sides. Optional, you can have a block under your thigh for support, or just blocks under your hands, or maybe you just chill out with your hips on the floor if you've got your flat splits. If that's the case, you're just going to relax. We'll be here 20 more seconds. Take it a couple breaths. And optional addition for those last 10 seconds, you can tuck your left toes. See if you can lift that left knee. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that left leg. Go ahead. Come on out. Find your way back to sitting on your butt. Give your legs a shake out. Give them a windshield wiper side to side. Now that our hips are super warmed up, hip flexors feeling good, hamstrings feeling good, it's time to start adding some blocks. So when we're working on oversplits, I like to have really work oversplits two ways. I like having a block under the front leg. That works those hamstrings a little bit more. Block under the back leg works the hip flexors a little bit more. Generally, since our hip flexors are the piece that is tighter when it comes to our front splits, putting the block under the back leg is the harder leg. I like starting with it first to get out of the way, because then when we throw it under the front leg, that feels a little bit easier by comparison. But you're welcome to really do this in any order. But for the purposes of this class, we'll start with a block under our back leg. So we're going to make our way to a low lunge with our left leg forwards. And I'm going to have a block under the top of my right foot. So my toes are going to be pointed. Top of my right foot is on the block. You're also welcome to use a foam roller and put it right under your ankle if that's more comfortable. But our goal is to have that foot just a teeny bit elevated. And I keep my torso lifted, either hands on my thigh, hands on blocks for balance. You can have your hands on a wall or chair for something as balance as well. We're going to do some knee taps. This is probably my second favorite active hip flexor flexibility exercise, because this is another one where we're going to be engaging our quads and our glutes while our hip flexors get a little bit more of a stretch. So from our low lunge, options for this, leaning forwards makes this a teeny bit easier. The more you have your chest lifted, the harder this is going to be, and the more of a hip flexor stretch you get. So I'll show it both ways. If you haven't done this before, go ahead, start leaning forwards. And if that's easy, you can lift your torso. But what we're going to be doing is trying to keep our hips nice and low. We're going to push the top of our right foot into the block. lifting that knee up, straightening that leg. So I want you to be engaging your glutes to keep your hips low. Don't let them rocket up to the ceiling. You're engaging your quads. That's what's straightening that leg. Hip flexors are getting a small amount of a stretch here. We're going to bend that knee. Just let it barely kiss the ground. So I'm not going to settle all my weight in that leg. I'm just going to barely tap the ground, straighten it again. I'm going to 10 times. So I'm going to start with my torso low, and I'm going to lift my torso as we go so you can see what it looks like. You're welcome to do that as well. Do it all with your torso lifted, all leaning forwards, whatever feels good for you. So when you're ready, we're going to lift that back knee for 10. 9. Keeping our hips as low as you can. 8. 7. 6. 5. Trying to barely touch the ground with your knee. 4. 3. 2. I know they get birdie. Last one. Relax that knee. Now you can drop all of your weight into that leg. Okay, taking a break here for a moment. Kind of wiggle out your hips if you need it. Then from here, we're going to do some butt kicks. So for these, we're going to be engaging our hamstrings to get more of a stretch through the front of that hip. So again, trying to keep my torso lifted. I'm going to try to squeeze my right heel towards my butt. Feeling a nice squeeze in those hamstrings. Drop it back down to the block. 10 times. I'm going to be butt kicking for 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. Last one, you're just going to hold that heel squeezing here about 10 seconds. Pulling it in 10. 9. 8. Keep squeezing. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Relax that foot back. Let's give those hip flexors a break. Go ahead, find your hamstring stretch here. You can keep your foot there. Doesn't matter. If it feels weird, you're welcome just to kick that block to the side. It's not doing anything in this stretch. But front leg is going to either be straight or have a tiny bend in that knee for those of you who hyperextend knees. Finding our forward fold. Toes can be pointed. They can be flexed. You can alternate pointing and flexing. You want a little wiggle this time. All right, then from here, we're going to make our way out to our oversplit with a block under our back foot. I'm going to scoot back a teeny bit away from the wall. So for this one, we're going to have our block under the top of our right foot, just like when we were doing those lunging knee taps. I'm going to take my right leg, slide it forwards as far as I can, starting to find my split. And now that we're adding some funky positions, I want you to be extra conscious of how much pressure is getting put into that front leg, our left knee. So I want, instead of you relaxing all the way here, letting the underside of that left knee put to the floor, I want you to keep it a teeny bit elevated. So even if you're totally flat on the ground, trying to make the smallest amount of space under that knee. So you're contracting your hamstrings an itty bitty bit so that we're making them a little bit stronger while they're in this lengthened position. That's going to be good. Keep your knees a little bit safer, especially when we start adding a block under the front leg. So wherever you're at, you're also welcome to throw a block under that front thigh for a little bit of support, but don't take it past the knee because that's going to start turning into an oversplit on the front leg. So anywhere from the knee to your butt, we're going to hang out here about 30 seconds in our passive split. You can keep your knee on the floor to start, but after 30 seconds, we're going to make it a little bit harder. So first, just hanging out in our split. Block under the back foot. It's not actually doing anything while that knee is on the ground. But just re-getting our legs used to our split. You can do a little wiggle side to side with your hips if that feels nice. It's something I really like to do because I'm a wiggly person. All right, now that legs are a little bit more used to our split position, we're going to make this one a little more challenging. We're going to do those knee taps in our split. We're going to do 10 of them. So if you feel like you've got a lot of weight in your hands, I would suggest putting a block under that thigh. So this is easier for your front leg, so you can focus more on what your back leg is doing. If you're in a flat split on the ground, go ahead, keep chilling out in that split. But from here, we're going to push top of our right foot into the block, lift that knee for 10, 9, 8. Make sure both hip bones are pointing forward. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one, knee stays lifted. Keep it lifted 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7. Breathe in 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you can relax. Come on out. Shake out your legs. Give those knees a nice windshield wiper, side to side. And we'll do that same routine with our right leg forwards. So starting with the block under the back or the top of our left foot. Right foot's going to step forwards, finding our low lunge. So right knee is on top of that right ankle. Torso is nice and lifted. We're feeling that stretch through the front of that left hip. Mentally preparing yourself for our knee taps. I know these are typically not people's favorite exercise because they're very squeezy, but that's what makes them very good for you. They're challenging for a reason. If you're bad at them, you should do them more often. These do make a big difference in those hip flexors, especially for folks who like doing splits in the air. They're going to be real good for you. So we do 10 knee taps. You can lean forwards if you like. You can have your chest totally lifted if you want to challenge, or you can do half and half. When you're ready, we're going to push the top of that left foot into our block. Lift that knee, bending that knee. Just try to tap it onto the ground. Straighten it again. Here for 8, trying to keep your hips low. So squeeze that left butt cheek to prevent your hips from popping up. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one, then you can relax that left knee down. Take a breather here for a moment before we move on to our butt kicks. So engaging our hamstrings. When you're ready, you're going to pull your left heel towards your butt, squeeze in those hamstrings for a moment, and slowly relax it back on down. Here for 9, 8, 7, 6, halfway through, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one, we're just going to keep squeezing that heel to our butt. 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7. Put it in. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg back. Go ahead, straighten your right leg. Maybe add a small micro bend to that knee. Finding your forward fold. Hamstring stretch over our right leg. Optional, foot can flex if you want a calf stretch, or you can point and flex if you want a little wiggle while you are here. And when you're ready, we'll start to slide our right leg forwards, finding 30 seconds passive split hold. So this may just be totally relaxing with your hips on the ground. Maybe you want to block somewhere under that front thigh if you're not quite square. You want a moment to relax before we make this a little bit harder. Making sure both hip bones are pointing forwards. Taking a couple breaths. Whichever version you choose, I want you to choose the smallest amount of a bend in that front knee. So teeny amount of hamstring engagement, keeping that knee bent instead of pressing the entire underside of that knee towards the floor. Even if you're already leg on the floor, lift that knee just a micrometer. All right, passive stretch another 10 seconds, then we'll add our knee lifts on that back leg. So when you're ready, we're going to do 10 knee lifts with that left leg pushing the top of our left foot or left ankle into the block, lifts in that knee, dropping it down. 9, 8, double check that left hip is still pointing forwards, not opening up. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one, we're going to keep that knee lifted, squeeze that left butt cheek, drop that hip. 10, 9, 8, 7 more seconds. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead, come on out, bring your butt down to the floor. Both your legs a shakeout. Give them that windshield wiper, any kind of reset wiggles that you need. Feel free to take them. Now let's get ready to throw that block under the front leg. Before we go out into our all-out front leg block over split, let's do teeny bit extra work for our hip flexors and our hamstrings. I want you to make your way out to your half split, which is our hamstring stretch, with that left leg forwards, hips over our right knee. both hips nice and square. From here, we're going to be doing some leg lifts, following it with a forward fold. So we're going to be engaging our hip flexors and our quads, making our hamstrings relax, and then finding our hamstring stretch while our hamstrings are nice and relaxed. So options for these. Option number one, torso is totally lifted, back nice and flat as we try to lift that leg. If this is feeling easy, adding a forward fold is going to make this harder. So this might be a very small forward fold, your hand on a chair or your blocks or the wall for support. Still trying to lift that leg. The more you lean forwards, the harder it's going to be to lift this front leg. So you can lean as much as you want for your version of a challenge, but I want you to keep your back flat. So what we don't want is to be rounding through our back to be able to lift that thigh towards our chest. Not the point. I want our pelvis to be tilted forwards so that we're getting a hamstring stretch while we're lifting that leg. So picking your torso height of choice, we're going to lift this left leg 10 times, lifting 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg, forward fold. So now I want you to make sure that left knee is just slightly lifted, so keeping the tiniest microbend in the backside of that knee. You're still going to feel that hamstring stretch, but this is going to be important when we put a block under our front leg in a moment. The reason that we're keeping this knee bent is we don't want all of our weight to be smushing into the underside of the knee, pushing our leg into hyperextension. It's a bad habit. It may feel more comfortable. It may feel easier, but I want you to get used to engaging your hamstring muscles ever so slightly, which keeps this knee a little bit bent to protect our knee. Hold in here for another couple of breaths. And then we'll start sliding out to an oversplit with a block under our front leg. So options for this, option number one, I would suggest starting with that block under your left leg, under the calf, real close to your knee. The reason I suggest this is this is gonna encourage keeping that bend in the knee. It's really, really hard to hyperextend the knee when the block is supporting our calf close to that knee. So this is a great position to start in. You're still letting those hips sink a little bit lower than your traditional split. As that feels better over time, we can work that block out a little bit farther towards our ankle. And the closer towards our ankle we get, the more or the less support we get under the back of that knee. So now it's your job to keep that micro bend in your knee with that little bit of hamstring engagement. And eventually, you can work your way out to having a block under your heel. But as long as that knee isn't hyperextending, so pulling the underside of that back knee up towards the ceiling, ever so slightly. So finding a place to place that block. You can either start with that leg on a block, slide your back leg back, or I personally like to kind of start in a sloppy open split, lean to the side, physically lift this leg, deposit it on the block, and then rock my hips back into my split. That's usually the easiest way to get into it, but really any way you can get that block under your leg is going to be the best way to do it. So finding your block support, and we're going to go ahead and lift our torso. We're going to slightly lift the underside of the knee if your block is slightly farther forwards. We're going to hold here for 30 seconds. Torso stays lifted. So still feel lots of a stretch through the back leg hip, even though the block's under that front leg. And if you want even more knee support, I want you to try to engage your quads ever so slightly, trying to pull your kneecap back towards your hips. So the top side of our leg is a little engaged, and the underside of our leg is a little engaged. Super active, isometric, because both sides are contracting. Not a lot, just a small amount of engagement, like 3 out of 10 intensity. Hold in here for 10 more seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, come on out. Lose that leg. Shake them out if you need shake out. Give your knees a windshield wiper if they need a windshield wiper. Then we'll do the same thing with the right leg forwards. So coming back to our half split, right leg in front. And if you want this to be real challenging, go ahead, add a forward fold. If you need to start this one with your torso more lifted, that's totally fine. Really, anything that's letting us contract those hip flexors and quads is what we want. So we're going to do 10 leg lifts with this right leg, lifting for 10, 9, back stays flat, no matter which option you choose. 8, 7, 6, 5, 2. Last one, relax that right leg, forward fold. Add a tiny micro bend to that right knee. Back staying flat as we find our hamstring stretch. Optional, you can throw a block under that front foot if that feels like a nice addition, especially if normally you can get your hands to the floor. I'll hold here for a couple more breaths. And then when you're ready, we're going to start to slide out to our traditional split, placing a block somewhere under this right leg for support. So you can either keep that block under your heel as you slide your leg out, as long as you're able to keep that slight micro bend in that knee, that little bit of hamstring engagement to keep the underside of our knee from collapsing to the floor. Or if you prefer the more supported version to start, starting with the block real close to the knee, or moving it slightly farther away as you get stronger and more capable of holding that micro bend in your knee. We're going to hold here for 30 seconds. Taking a couple breaths. And so we got a little bit of a contraction in the underside of that right leg. We can also add a little contraction in the top of the leg, trying to pull our kneecap back towards our hip. Contracting our quads also does a little bit to relax our hamstrings, even though they're doing a little bit of a contraction too. Last 15 seconds. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax. Come on out. Bring your butt to the floor. Give both your legs a shake. Got a thing to shake. Get those knees a windshield wiper side to side. Last round we're going to do double over split. Blocks under both the front leg and the back leg. We're going to start left foot forwards, right foot back. For this one, block is going to be under the top of our right foot, just like when we were doing all of our back block over splits earlier. For our front leg, that left leg, you've got options. Easiest option would actually be having the block under the front thigh. So this is going to be less of an oversplit in the front leg, more of an oversplit in the back leg if you need more support. If you would like more of the traditional oversplit, we're going to take that block either under the left calf, if this is what you were doing that last round we just did. The farther we take that block forwards, the less knee support we get, so the more important it is for you to have that micro contraction in those hamstrings to keep the underside of your knee lifted so it doesn't collapse to the floor and hyperextend that knee. So choosing a block position on that front leg of your choice. We're going to be here for about 30 seconds. First 20 seconds, we're just going to be relatively relaxed in the back leg, so knee can chill out. On the ground, you might have hands on blocks if you need them. If your hips aren't quite low, that's fine. Keeping a small bend in that left knee, whether it's you're supporting it with the block or whether you're adding it through that teeny tiny hamstring contraction, trying to lift the underside of your knee up towards the ceiling. Taking a couple breaths. Double checking that your hips are still nice and square. For our last 10 seconds, this is our challenge round. You're going to push the top of that right foot into the block. Try to lift your right knee up. So now both knees are lifted away from the floor. Holding for 10, 9, 8. Maybe your hips can sink down. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Relax. Come on out. Shake out those legs. We're going to do the same thing with the right leg forward. So block is going to be under the top of our back foot. Block under the front leg. You get to choose whether it's under your thigh, if this is real challenging, under your calf, if you want some of that knee support and a little bit more of that oversplit action in the front leg, or if you're feeling real strong, you can have it under that heel, as long as you're lifting the underside of that knee up, not letting it collapse. Be here for 30 seconds. Taking a couple breaths. Double checking that both your hip bones are pointing forwards, particularly that left hip likes to splay out to the side. In our hips, we've got tighter hip flexors there. Taking a couple more breaths. Got maybe adding a little bit of a quad contraction in that front leg, trying to pull our kneecap back towards our hip. Then our last 10 seconds, we're going to engage that back leg, pushing our left foot, left ankle into the block, lifting that left knee, holding both knees lifted. 10, 9, 8, 7, and 1. Come on down. Relax. Shake out both of your legs. Take your feet to the floor. Give those knees a little windshield wiper side to side. And of course, give yourself a round of applause for doing all of the lovely oversplitty stuff. So for those of you who, as this gets comfortable over time and are looking to keep progressing this is a really easy exercise to progress because we simply start adding blocks under the back leg, under the front leg, and eventually you can add them under both legs. So you can go through the same routine, but instead of 1 block under the back leg, you have 2 blocks, or maybe depending on the difficulty of the exercise, you start with 1 block for all the active work. But when you get to be working on your oversplit holds, you do 30 seconds with 1 block, 30 seconds with 2 blocks. That's the way that I really like to do it. It gives you a little bit more progression, and it's not quite as shocking just starting on 2 blocks, which is quite a bit of an increase. So doing extra blocks is a great way to do it. And for folks who find this challenging, that's totally fine. Oversplits are a challenging exercise. So you're always welcome to do some of these exercises without the blocks under your feet. Do a little bit more work in your traditional splits, but doing them with blocks under your feet, maybe even under your hands, if you're finding a hard time keeping your torso lifted, is a great way to be doing them as well. If you've got any questions, please send me an email, shoot me an Instagram message. Happy to answer them, and best of luck with all your training.